Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where social outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co host, the nerdy occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Good evening, everyone.
And
7 years until my birthday.
he'll be old as fuck.
I've been old as fuck since I was 9 years old. Thank you. The running joke in my family has been I've been whatever age I am, going on about 70. But yes, I will be 31 in 7 days, which of course makes me think of the "Make You a Man" song from Rocky Horror.
Okay.
Insert your gay jokes now.
I've never seen that, so.
Okay, I know what we're doing when me and Brainstormer meet up IRL. Fucking hell.
Well, I've seen the first Rocky, and I've seen, like, the one with Adrian Troll.
Not Rocky. Rocky Horror, as in the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you said Rocky 4. Okay, my bad. Now, I've seen Rocky Horror, obviously.
I was about to. We were about to get a scenario where I come to your house, tie you to the chair like Clockwork Orange.
Yeah. Okay, Okay, you use the same fucking thread all the time, man. Get some new material. Jesus.
Because there are so many things for which the only fucking advisable prescription is Ludovico technique.
Okay, but hey, Giant Turtle, good to see you. I'm doing good, more or less. Just tired, I guess. It's been a long week for me. It is kind of uplifted because one of Dalton's first gifts has already made it to him.
Okay, so there will be others, then.
Maybe there will, maybe there won't. I'll keep you guessing.
Okay. Fair enough.
Do you feel comfortable sharing what you got?
Yes. Brainstormer got me a voodoo doll. I don't really have a use for one at the moment, but it's going on my shelf that I put all my folk magic stuff on.
Be fair, I have had that saved since Christmas.
Mm.
Yeah, that was on my Amazon wish list. I kept it there because I knew I wanted to get something like that for you. So, because I've gotten you like a hat. I've gotten you a boat. I got you I fucked up with the bow tie. I won't admit. I will admit I fucked up the bow tie on that one.
They're hard to shop for because they never tell you online whether it's an actual latch on mechanism and how it's fucking distributed. Shit.
I think the first gift I ever got you was that Ankh necklace.
I believe the Ankh. I believe the Ankh was first. Yes.
Yeah.
And I know the first thing I got you was the customized hockey mask.
Yes, it was.
I still have yet to one up that one. I need to get more creative come Christmas.
Yeah.
Which I can actually afford now because I do have a steady income, albeit on disability.
Yeah.
But
I'm also gonna be fully fair. I ordered that 2 days ago, so I'm actually kind of surprised it came to you that fast.
Me and my roommate were both kind of confused when it came in because I've actually been trying to order some stuff, some historical clothing for the Seven Pearls competition I'm in August, and it had some kind of schizophrenic issue with my card. So at first when it came in under my name, we were thinking, oh, maybe the weird bullshit that Amazon was having was resolved, but no. I opened it and I'm like, okay, I know where this came from, and my roommate was like, are you sure you didn't order this? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure this is nothing that I ordered, but I think I know who did. And then I took a picture of it and sent it to Brainstorm, and it was like, I'm assuming this is something of yours.
And with that, I respond, "Happy birthday!"
Yes, and yeah, because Brainstormer has gotten into the habit of being able to get me some really cool shit. So
I mean, I've always thought about getting you magic books, but I know you have a collection. I don't want to like give you a set,
something I already have.
Yeah, and I don't want to ask you what books you have because obviously that's going to spoil the surprise.
Right.
So I often try to get you little trinkets more so.
Yeah. I will say, last Christmas, the little shrunken head, that was cute, kids.
I was very proud of myself for that one.
I know it's been a running. I know I've mentioned it on here many times around Christmas time, but in Night Before Christmas, when Jack is going and doing his quasi Santa thing, and the kid opens up the shrunken head, I was the kind of weird kid who, if that had happened to me, I would be like, "This is fucking awesome."
Okay, full honesty, never my intention. Actually, I never meant to make that reference. I just thought you'd like a shrunken head.
Observe the audience. Observe audience how his brain does things without even realizing he's doing them, and then when I fill in the gaps, he goes, "Well, that wasn't my intention, but it is now." This is precisely what he does.
I thought you'd like a shrunken head. Okay.
You were in fact correct, but I am quite.
I'm a perplexing motherfucker.
I am amused that for all the times I have mentioned precisely that on Christmas episodes of this show, your brain did not. Well, your subconscious probably did continue the registration. It's just it didn't. Your conscious mind and your unconscious mind did not check with each other as usual, and it became my job to fill in the gaps again. Lol.
Yeah.
Didn't that also happen when you got me the Ankh design, and it was like a Coptic Christian transition period between Greco-Roman period Egypt and Christian period Egypt, and I mentioned that, and you were like, well, I didn't intend that, but
yeah, no, I didn't. I didn't intend. It was. I just. Well, for one thing, because you're basically a pagan, in the loosest terms. I thought the cross symbology of it would be funny, but I also remember you telling me, like one of our earliest conversations, of you kind of getting into the Egyptian, having some ties to the Egyptian pantheon.
Yeah, the Egyptian
magic. So
the Egyptian pantheon was the first one to grab my attention when I started practicing.
Yeah. I thought that would just be nice.
largely because of a combination of growing up with Yu-Gi-Oh and growing up with Tottenstein, probably more than anything.
Yeah, that would do it.
I still do have a soft spot for Thoth. It's nothing against the Egyptian gods or anything. I just for a while there, I was more of the psychological model of magic, where spirits were unnecessary, and only once Neil Gaiman's Sandman pushed back on my suicidal ideation that one time after I flunked out of school, did I start looking into entities and summoning and evocation and shit. So, and then of course that led me to Mab, and here we are.
Right. Okay. So let me get the thing. So it's gonna be. I'm gonna be honest. It's gonna be kind of a short. Might be. It might be a short podcast.
It depends on
Because
how quickly we'll be able to get through these first couple.
yeah. So this is from Substack.com. John, The Beautiful Mess by John Pavlovitz. But saying again, I'm not good with names, so please forgive me on that. Okay,
He's not,
so super.
he's not good at names, kids. He could fuck up John Smith.
Okay, that's a bit harsh. So yeah, this is Supergirl didn't fall. She burned up entering the manosphere. Subtitle is, or subheader is how toxic content creators have ruined comic movie fandom. This is written, obviously, again by John Pavlovitz, published June 29th, 2026. Again, this is one of the ones we kind of meant to cover, but we haven't.
Yeah. Cards on the table. I am a men's rights advocate. I have a whole other podcast that I do that is men's rights related.
Be right back.
So I am ostensibly in the manosphere, but my being in the manosphere had nothing to do with my distaste for Supergirl. My distaste for Supergirl had to do with it being poorly conceived, poorly marketed, and just in general not a very good movie. And the character in question being written as a essentially drunken, burnt out career woman bitch. So yeah, it didn't really have anything to do with my manosphere credentials or lack thereof. It's just it wasn't a good movie. It didn't look like a good movie, and her cameo in Superman 25 did not endear me to her at all. Other people's motivations are other people's motivations, but I can, speaking for myself as a member of the manosphere, well, my anti-feminism and advocacy for the men's human rights movement, being as they are, they probably did to some degree make me oversensitive to Supergirl being written as a bitter middle-aged career woman burnout, and did probably predispose me to dislike her more than I otherwise might have. I've been an anti-feminist for much longer than I've been a men's rights advocate or in the manosphere, and I would have disliked that character type in general. But that doesn't mean that I hate women or even female fictional characters, as evidenced by the fact that I, much like everybody the fuck else on the face of the planet, loved the first Wonder Woman movie, and I even have a soft spot for the second. I even, in my review, you can go and check, said that I liked Wonder Woman 1984 and all its bizarre choices better than Supergirl. I think Supergirl would have been a more interesting movie if it had swung for the fences more. But while I am a detractor of this movie and I am in the manosphere, the two are only related insofar as the bitter, cynical, quasi-middle-aged career woman burnout archetype is so common to the quote-unquote girl boss of the 2010s and 2020s. But it has nothing to do with wanting Supergirl to fail or wanting Supergirl to be bad. I would have loved, and I specified this also in my review, as with most of my negative predictions about things, I want to be wrong, and I rejoice when I am wrong about negative predictions. It's just that sometimes I'm not wrong. I called it a year before. Hell, I called it a year before Superman 2025 came out, and nothing in the Supergirl marketing dissuaded me from my belief that I called it, because I called it. Um,
I'm back.
so it's not. So like, I would have loved to have been wrong about Supergirl. I would have loved for it to be enjoyable. It wasn't a very good movie. And yes, some of the ways in which it wasn't very good are very similar to things like Captain Marvel and Birds of Prey and the Marvels and so on. But that's more to do with how Hollywood refuses to distinguish between a female character and a feminist character. And frankly, how Hollywood assumes that women can relate to the bitter, cynical, at least middle-aged, coded
Hey, Don.
career woman burnout than they can. Anyway, moving on.
All right. Supergirl opened this weekend to. Sorry, Jared.
The
Yeah, nah.
the testicle joke, DT, the testicle joke. Lol.
I have to deal with Dalton's dirty mind and puns. Why you gotta add to that, DT? Come on, man.
I appreciate the testicle joke, DT.
Anyway, but its fate was sealed long before that, and it was very little to do with the quality of the film or the performance of its cast. So, I mean, I'm less
Negative on it than I am.
I mean, I still agree it's not great, and it could have been better. Like, you know, when we did the review, like, it was a week ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was it a week ago or was it 2 weeks ago? We did the review.
I think it might have been 2 weeks.
Okay. Fuck. God damn it, I had it. Son of a bitch. Fuck. Okay, right. That's what was. You know, we talked about how it could have been improved. Hell, even like properly adapting the Woman of Tomorrow story would have been better.
Yep. Had
But-
they actually done the book,
The
it
weird
may
thing
have still
is,
had problems with it, but it would have been a better movie.
The weird thing is, the director of Supergirl. Hold on. Okay. Craig Gillespie.
Mm-hmm.
He's done other stuff, you know.
Several of which were really quite good.
Yeah.
The Cruella movie was quite good, and so was Atomic Blonde.
Oh, he did the 2011 Fright Night.
Which was also pretty good, all things considered, actually.
I mean, I dug that movie. It's kind of the first movie I ever saw.
I like both Fright Nights, but they're both good. They're both good in their own right, which is hard to do for a remake. So it is that too is worth noting. And I think if Craig Gillespie were allowed to make his own version of a Supergirl movie instead of trying to riff on what he thinks James Gunn might have done with it, it would have been a better movie.
Yeah. Or if again, trying to be like someone and say, "Oh, we can write this better." I'm not saying that. If you're doing the Guardians of the Galaxy for Supergirl, commit to the cosmic side of DC then.
Yeah.
You know, like how we positioned it, you know, to be. Sorry,
have her fight some of the aliens that can go toe to toe with Kryptonians. If you're so worried that her power scaling is gonna fuck your movie, one, that's bad because that means you're writing the powers and not the person who's wielding them. But if you're so worried about the power scaling nerfing your movie, have her fight Daxamites. Have her fight what are they called? The what are Adam Strange people called? I know his home planet is Ron, but I don't know what the Ronnie is. It Ronnie?
Randians.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, there are species in the DC cosmology that can go toe to toe with Kryptonians, and some of which are even loosely tied to Supergirl. I know they recently did Mon-El as a quasi villain in the one Supergirl Legion superheroes crossover, but there's nothing stopping you from double dipping, especially because Mon-El has appeared in both that and
that's Daxamites.
Yeah, so like Daxamites basically have for more or less the same kinds of powers as Kryptonians. So like if you're so worried about the power scaling, rather than artificially nerfing her every 5 minutes by having her under some new sun or nerfed by some new MacGuffin, have her fight people who can fight her on her own terms. Hell, I still maintain that, especially given that we all knew that Jason Momoa's Lobo was going to be one of the better parts of this movie come hell or high water, you could have had somebody put a contract on Kara's head, which would make sense because she's off in space ruining people's days more often than Clark is. So like she could have accidentally been a bitch to somebody who then put a bounty on her head, and then Lobo comes in the picture, and that could have been a Lobo versus Kara movie. That would have been cool. Not sure how you could square that with also doing Woman of Tomorrow, but a good writer could have very easily found a way to do both. You could have even had it be kind of like, I know there's a lot of instances like this, but the one that's coming to my head at the moment is the one where Skulker and Danny Phantom were shrunken down by the fucking ecto shrinker there, and they ended up having to work together while they were depowered and shit. Or am I thinking of a different episode where they were tied together with handcuffs? But regardless, the idea of the villain and the hero having to work together because they're captured by somebody else is as old as the hills, and it could have been an interesting character dynamic to have Kara bouncing off of somebody like Lobo. But that would require actually caring about these stories and these characters for their own sake and on their own merits, instead of just as an excuse to make a thing. And Hollywood apparently does not do that anymore, least of all Warner Brothers, because Warner Brothers is, as ever, their own worst enemy when it comes to handling DC.
So let's actually get into the article.
Yeah.
Second offering in James Gunn's curated DCU didn't burn up on its entry into theaters. It was killed by 1,000 kryptonite darts in the weeks and months preceding, by an increasingly crowded YouTube/TikTok/IG landscape of monetized fandom that, as in every other facet of media, now runs on vitriol and negativity. Supergirl became its latest and perhaps most predictable target. Again,
it was only a target insofar as it didn't look good, and the character didn't make a great first impression on a lot of people in her 5 minutes on screen in Superman 25.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I don't know why. To be fair, you don't like Superman 2025.
No, I think there are many flaws in it. One of them being that cameo. I don't think it worked, and I don't think giving Crypto to Kara really worked either. But yeah, if you want to know the reason why Supergirl failed, it's because the marketing didn't make the movie look very good. None of the behind the scenes stories made the movie sound very good, and for a lot of people, it didn't. Her first impression didn't leave a lot of good taste in a lot of people's mouths. Even people who simped for Superman 2025, a lot of them had issues with the way Kara was handling that. So while you can certainly argue that Critical Drinker, Mahler, Nerdrotic, Little Platoon, etc., while you can certainly argue that the black pills, as Eglantine calls them, may have contributed to some of the negative press of Supergirl, most of the negative press was of its own making by virtue of just not looking like a very good movie. And unfortunately, because a lot of the movies and TV shows that have been germane to the superhero genre in recent years have been on the negative side of hit or miss more often than they've been good, while I don't think it's necessarily the case that the superhero genre is dying, it is factually the case, even if it's not some kind of logically presaged inevitability bullshit.
All right, hold on. General, regarding the Lobo being a frequent antagonist and the money thing, when he's given his word, that's the thing about Lobo that a lot of people tend to forget, is he is a man actually bound by his word. Granted, it is followed to the letter of the agreement rather than intent.
Lobo is very much an honor among thieves sort of character. That's why, for all that he is an antagonist, both in cases where it benefits him and cases where he just agrees not to. He may be a Superman villain, but he doesn't hate Supes. He just frequently finds himself at odds with Supes because Lobo is doing his bounty hunter thing, and Supes, for whatever reason, doesn't want him to be doing that by reason of plot.
Yeah. Anyway. Film's lead, House Dragons alum Millie Alcock, was dogged from the moment her casting was announced. I don't. She wasn't bad for casting. Again, it's going to be the same thing I was going to say. I don't think an actor is bad for a role. More often than not, it's that they're never given enough for the role.
And the main problem with Supergirl was the script. I don't know who got it in their heads to get somebody who literally never made a movie before, a theatrically released movie, period, let alone a major blockbuster, to do the script. But it was a mistake. I think, again, the better choice would have been let Craig Gillespie do what he thinks is right by Supergirl, and you probably would have gotten a better movie, but perhaps even more interesting, even more important in this case, you would have gotten a more interesting movie. Because for all of Craig Gillespie's other movies, they give you something to think about. They give you something to chew on a little bit. Even if the movie itself isn't particularly good, it lingers. It leaves an impression. Whereas one of the worst things about Supergirl is, even when compared to things like Wonder Woman 1984 and the Marvels, Supergirl just doesn't leave an impression. It doesn't give you much to work with after you've watched it.
But then they can't fill their end of the bargain, so deal null and void. be fair, Little Will himself was actually just made to be a parody of like the '80s like action hero, like that.
But I mean, he's literally basically a parody of Macho Man Randy Savage and the like classic like the overblown like wrestler heel stereotype. Your Hulk Hogan's, your Randy Savages, your the Warriors, that sort of character. With a little bit of Kiss style rock and roll thrown in.
Alright. Face a fierce torrent. Oh, sorry. Okay. Disturbing amount of villain. Her. Okay, hold on. Was dawned from the moment her cast was announced with a disturbing amount of venom hurled at her physical appearance. Something that has reached a disgraceful zenith since the film's release. I
didn't see anybody. I didn't see anybody, even in the like black pill sphere, really say much about her appearance, other than that the movie was going out of its way to not try to make her pretty, which I do think was a mistake, because I think one of the reasons Barbie was as successful as it was is much in the same way as boys and people in general have what's known colloquially as the rule of cool. Girl-centric stuff has an equivalent to that I call the rule of pretty. Just like boys' power fantasy is they want to be cool and badass and powerful, a lot of girls' power fantasy is they want to be pretty and well-liked. And that's another one of the reasons why I don't think many of the feminist-approved, bitter HR hag girl boss types really register very well with people, because a large part of the way feminists write female characters is making them as abrasive, as standoffish, and as, for lack of, there's just no better way of putting it, cunty as possible. And no woman wants to be seen as a cunt. Women want to be seen as both pretty and likable. And if you don't give women enough of either pretty or likable or both to work with, they're not going to show up. In the same way as if you pitch a stereotypical tough guy action hero to boys, but it doesn't follow the rule of cool or the rule of badass or the rule of, the powerhouse, it's not going to work. And I think Hollywood would get a lot more work done if it would just acknowledge that I don't care how true to the intersectional feminist bullshit the hatred of beauty standards is. Women want to be beautiful in the same way men and boys want to be powerful. It's as simple as that. Men and boys have the rule of cool, girls and women have the rule of pretty and or likable. And in theory, both men and women, girls and boys, can appreciate both of these standards. But if you're gonna target something at one gender over another, this distinction is something you should probably at least try to keep in mind. When the feminists tell you that beauty standards are oppressive and women being valued for their appearance is oppressive and women being likable for the sake of male characters' convenience is oppressive, you need to learn to tell them to shut the fuck up and go away. Because otherwise, this is what's going to happen. People liked Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman because she was both a kick-ass warrior and looked competent doing it, which is the important bit, and she was pretty and she was likable. You'd be amazed how many normies and lowest common denominator types in general, and even a large swath of the nerd community you can get away with if you just abide by the rule of cool and the rule of pretty. If you can do both barrels, if you can hit both points, then you will almost certainly be successful. Rule of cool plus rule of pretty is about 70 to 80% likely to work. Or at least at that point, it's your battle to lose. Shunning both rule of cool and rule of pretty will get you a giant bomb more often than not. We can say how we would like it if the general audience was more intellectual TM all we want, but you can't argue with an is from the perspective of an ought. You can say the lowest common denominator should have higher standards till the cows come home, but that's not going to change the standards they hold. And the standards as they are, as far as anyone can tell, is boys like the rule of cool, girls like the rule of pretty, and if you can manage both, you will almost certainly succeed. Moving on.
Okay. And that to add to that, a female screenwriter, Anna Nogueira, along with the rabid disdain for Gunn's supposed woke agenda from aspiring alpha male online gatekeepers. And from the beginning, the manosphere was simply not going to allow to succeed.
Just for the record, and again, I can say this because I actually am in kind of both spheres at this point. There's a distinction between the anti-woke or anti-social justice or anti-feminism sphere and the manosphere. You can be pro-men without necessarily being particularly anti-feminist, and you can be anti-feminist without ever touching the manosphere. But one thing we can say for sure is people like the Critical Drinker, like Mahler, like Gary for Neurotic, they're not really part of the manosphere. They get lumped in with the manosphere because a lot of people can't imagine a scenario where you could oppose feminism without simping for men in some kind of reaction formation sort of way. But trust me, I've been in the anti-social justice, anti-feminism sphere of YouTube since like 2013, and I've been a men's rights advocate since 2018, 2019, thereabouts. That was when my position on such things matured to the point where I accepted that. But yeah, there are plenty of people whose arguments against feminism and against intersectionality and against social justice have nothing at all to do with simping for men. In fact, many people who are strictly anti-feminist think that giving a shit about men or valuing men as anything other than a means to an end is cringe and gay. And likewise, there are people in the manosphere whose reasons for opposing feminism have nothing to do with the neo-Hegelian social justice wankery that is intersectionality. I happen to occupy both spheres, but it is important to remember Critical Drinker, Mahler, Gary for Neurotic, not necessarily manosphere channels. They are anti-feminist channels, they are anti-social justice or anti-woke channels, but there is a fine distinction between people in the manosphere and people who simply oppose feminism for any number of other reasons. Granted, there is some overlap there, and I think that overlap is growing as time goes by, because I think even the normies are cottoning on to the fact of just how much our civilization despises catering anything to men if they can feasibly avoid it. But there are reasons to be an anti-feminist that have more to do with traditionalism or egalitarianism than with being concerned about men's rights or men's issues. And there are reasons to be in favor of men's rights and men's issues that have nothing to do with opposing feminism. Moving on.
All right. A fierce torn of dude bro think pieces, panel conversations, and supposed scoops flooded social media, each one working to one up the others, with skies falling histrionics. Yellow Sun. Okay. Yellow Sun hot takes and click garnering thumbnails. More than any superhero movie since the first Captain Marvel film, have performative fragile males worked so hard to poison public sentiment before a second of footage was released.
You don't pay much attention to the black pill spear of YouTube, do you? Because they've worked hard to pre-damn a lot of things, both justifiably and non-justifiably. Justifiably in the cases of things like The Acolyte and Velma, and non-justifiably in the cases of things like Agatha all along. Like, I know you're exaggerating for effect to some degree, but if you think this is the first time since Captain Marvel that the EFAP crowd has really gotten a bee in their bonnet about something, you have not been paying attention at all. Hell, She-Hulk. I realize we all kind of repressed She-Hulk because it was, but I would argue they put in a lot more airtime on She-Hulk and how bad She-Hulk was. Again, justifiably in the case of She-Hulk, or justifiably in the case of things like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which had nothing to do with women. So there's that. Yeah. If you think that Supergirl is the first time Critical Drinker, Gary from Neurotic, and Mahler and the EFAP crowd have really done this maneuver, you haven't been paying attention. There's plenty of arguments to be made about when they do over egg things and when they do essentially try to will a flop into existence where it shouldn't be. Again, thinking in terms of like Agatha all along and Multiverse of Madness, but yeah, Supergirl isn't one of those. Supergirl is roughly as bad as it looked. Whether you like the movie or not, even people who liked the movie ended up just kind of being mid on it. And unfortunately, again, because the superhero genre has been on the more negative side of hit or miss for a while now, the superhero genre is at least on life support, not because it was some kind of inevitable presaged trend of the market or anything, but because the quality wasn't there, and the quality not being there soured a lot of people on it, and they've been burned giving things a chance so many times before, whether it's Eternals, whether it's She-Hulk, whether it's Falcon and Winter Soldier, whether it's Brave New World, whether it's Ironheart, whether the list goes on and on and on. So unfortunately, whether we like it or not, and I don't, I would like the superhero genre to go back to being healthy again, but the superhero genre is kind of on life support, and you do have to put in extra effort if you want to stand out above the fray. Like Superman 25 did put in the effort to distinguish itself among the fray, even if I don't think that movie was very good. And Fantastic Four, which was actually the better of the superhero things released in 2025, did a tremendous job distinguishing itself and rising above the fray. But even the moderate successes in the superhero genre now are only the mid-tier successes of the height of phase 3. I believe Fantastic Four made somewhere in the vicinity of about 500 million, and 500 million used to be the bare minimum for the superhero genre. Ant-Man 1 made 519, and that was one of the lowest grossing Marvel movies at the time. Whereas now, what used to be the bare minimum for like the entry point for the superhero genre is now the exception, because for every one that does get above the one or two that does get above the 500 threshold, like Superman 25 and Fantastic Four, you wind up with 5 or 6 that at minimum peter out around like the 400 mark, like Eternals, like Black Widow, like Shang-Chi, and then you get the exceptionally bad ones like the Marvels and Supergirl that will be lucky if they hit 200. Moving on.
Alcoholic especially has been hounded by criticism over her physicality and her perceived lack of enthusiasm on the press circuit. Seriously, maybe you should smile more vibes. YouTube accounts such as Neurotic Daily and Geeks and Gamers, whose stable of mortally mortally insecure, insufferable incels have been among those most ruthlessly attacking the actress in an effort to grow their already massive viewership among other easily lured young men weaned on conservative sexism and toxic masculinity.
Again, I have not seen much in the way of attacking the actress. I've seen people attack her for the things she said in interviews promoting the thing, but that's mostly been due to that being a terrible way to market something. Like when Millie Alcock says something about triggering Christian dads or something like that. That was a terrible thing to say if you want the lion's share of your audience to show the fuck up to your movie. But yeah, I haven't seen anyone disparaging Millie Alcock. I've seen people complaining that she's been deliberately, much like Rose Tico in Last Jedi, made to look uglier than she is on purpose because something strong independent women. And that is, I think, a valid criticism, and it's something that Hollywood does need to stop being in the habit of doing. Dear Hollywood, I will say this again, and I will say it as simply as I can because you people have the attention span and the intellectual fortitude of 5-year-olds. Beauty is a power. I don't care what intersectional feminist ideologues have told you. Beauty is not a vector of oppression. Beauty is, in fact, one of the most universal counters for vectors of oppression out there. We give pretty people the benefit of the doubt way more often than not, and most people, both men and women, understand that. That's one of the reasons why the feminine equivalent of the rule of cool is very often the rule of pretty. Beauty is a power, and people like the idea of wielding that power. And constantly portraying your female characters as these bitter, cynical, middle-aged coded burnouts who shun traditional beauty standards, derp, it's always going to backfire on you because men like seeing women who are pretty and women like being women who are pretty. These are just the facts. We can argue as to whether they should be the facts and whether those facts have a moral component to them and blah, blah, blah. We can argue these things until the cows come home. But again, you cannot counter an is with an ought. No matter how much you would like to, you cannot morally bully facts of the human psyche out of existence. Moving on.
And then, of course, there are the legions of perpetually lathered up, zealous Zack Snyder's fanboys who have been sitting vigil for the last couple of decades and who want so desperately for the DCU to fail so that they can once again work themselves into a public frenzy to restore their beloved auteur to the lofty place they believe he alone deserves.
Yes, and those people are morons too, because Snyder did not understand jack or shit about the things he was adapting, and nor did he particularly care to understand the characters. He just wanted to use the characters. But that doesn't mean that James Gunn going ahead and doing a similar thing with different sensibilities is a good thing. That's one of the reasons why one of my reoccurring lines when we were talking about Superman 25 was yes, Superman 25 is a massive improvement over Man of Steel. But Man of Steel did everything the exact opposite of the way it should have done it. So doing considerably better than the exact opposite of the way you should do things isn't necessarily good on its like you can go far above bad without ever reaching the quality of good. There are many integers of still bad or neutrality you have to go through to get to good. Goodness is not simply the absence of bad, goodness is the presence of a positive integer. Goodness is not simply the absence of a negative integer, it is the presence of a positive one. And so, yes, while I do think James Gunn's sensibilities lend themselves more to what most people want from DC, and in particular, to some degree at least, from Superman, I still don't think Superman 2025 was very good. And if Supergirl is reflective of the direction that the Gunverse is going, it may not be as insufferable as Zack Snyder, but that doesn't make it good. It just makes it less shit. Personally, for me, I like the kind of middle thing we had going on after Snyder, but before Gunn, where the tone was lighter and more comic booky, but also still had a little bit of the like mythological cachet. Stuff like the first and second Wonder Woman, the first and second Flash, all both of the Shazams, Black Adam, Blue Beetle, etc. That would have been the tone I would have gone with, and what I would have liked to have seen continue, despite The Rock's massive ego, and despite the fact that somebody needed to quietly sit him down and explain that I don't care what you want, Mr. Johnson. Black Adam is a Shazam family villain, not a Superman villain, and you're just going to have to deal with that. He should have at least gotten the chance to, though, because I genuinely think that going off of the Justice Society as established in Black Adam and building on things like Aquaman, Wonder Woman 1 and 2, both Shazams, etc., would have been better for DC as a whole. That was killed by Friendly Fire because they announced, because somebody wanted to screw over Dwayne Johnson, and so they announced the Gunverse months before any of the second round of the neither Snyder nor Gunn movies came out, and so they died. And I would like to think that James Gunn can do better, and I think on his better days he can do better. But his Superman was by far and away probably his most flawed movie since he started doing blockbusters. I'm not counting all the Trauma shit because that's Trauma, and Trauma is a completely different animal. But ever since he started doing blockbuster, I would say that Superman 2025 was his worst movie, and Supergirl is not a step in the right direction. It is very much a step in the wrong direction. So I call them as I see them, unfortunately. Moving on.
But it isn't easily intimidated conservative. But it isn't easily intimidated conservative men only, as plenty of female content creators gleefully joyed joined in the sorry, incessant crepe hanging over the last few months, proving that it isn't just the guys who are capable of manufacturing misogyny are being driven to corrosively by declining revenue streams in oversaturated online spaces. To curry the fate of their
Honey,
large audiences, many women in these spaces have face-shamed Alcock with juvenile AI generated caricatures.
honey, feminism is not women. Intersectional feminism is even less jacked into the female oversoul than feminism more generally is. Women are individuals capable of making up their own individual mind, and there's nothing misogynistic about them not liking a bad movie with a non-aesthetically pleasing protagonist. Because again, men and boys tend to, lowest common denominator, most normie, all other things being equal, men and boys respond to the rule of cool. Girls and women, again, lowest common denominator, most normie, all other things being equal, respond to the rule of pretty. And the rule of pretty, generally speaking, applies to both a character's internal existence and their external existence. Whether you like it or not, women generally are not feminists, least of all the intersectional post-Frankfurt School kind, and women acknowledge the thing that feminism never will, which is beauty is not oppressive, beauty standards are not irreducibly subjective, and beauty is a power that women wield, and they like to wield it. So when you make a character an asshole and kind of an ugly person both inside and out, that is naturally not going to appeal to a large number of women or men, because men also have a secondary enjoyment for the rule of pretty. It's just not their primary thing. Their primary thing tends to be the rule of cool. Just like a lot of women respond quite well to the rule of cool, just like men do. It's not their primary algorithm, it seems. That's why in a good movie, or at least a movie on its way to being successful, you want to hit both of these vectors. You want the rule of cool to be satisfied and the rule of pretty to be satisfied, or you will never hit with the mainstream audience. Or if you do hit, you're going to have to do a lot of work, and it's going to have to be very, very high quality in order to stand against both of those grains. Sick of this foot. Moving on.
Okay. Let's be clear. Art interpretation is subjective, and there's nothing wrong with criticisms grounded in substance or admonishments about straying from the source material, as happened here. That's not what this is, as evidenced by the giddy celebrations of the film's financial failure among the men largely filling these spaces. Supergirl is a flawed yet well-crafted comic book movie.
Flawed, yes. Well-crafted, no.
Alcock especially does wonderful work combining the titular character and deserves to get further chance to bring Kara Zor-El to audiences. While it by no means reaches the stratospheric heights of Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, or the Russo brothers' Infinity War, it sure as heck isn't Morbius, Black Adam, or Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Okay, you can take Black Adam right the fuck out of your mouth there, my darling. Putting Black Adam in the same category as Morbius, I will not fucking stand for. There was a lot of good shit in Black Adam. There was next to no good shit in Morbius whatsoever. You can take Black Adam right the fuck out of your mouth. And yes, unfortunately, I think Supergirl is a lot closer to Morbius than it is to Black Adam. It's not as bad as Morbius or Madam Web, because very few things on this earth could be, but I will say that if you gave me the option of watching Supergirl again or watching Wonder Woman 1984 or the Marvels again, I would probably pick the Marvels or Wonder Woman 1984 over Supergirl. Ask me Birds of Prey. I'd have a hard time picking, but I think I would seriously be more entertained in a so bad it's good way by Birds of Prey than I was with Supergirl. So maybe even then. That might be a recency bias and I would much rather watch an interesting car crash than a completely bland, just nothing of a thing. But yeah, gun to my head, if I had to pick between those four things, I think Supergirl would probably come last. I think Supergirl is a better made movie than Birds of Prey, and a better made movie than the Marvels um or Wonder Woman 1984. But I think Wonder Woman 1984 and the Marvels had more of a soul by virtue of it was at least trying to do something. It just frequently the something was a mistake. But at least they were honest mistakes. Whereas Supergirl didn't really seem to try to do much of anything except for rip off Mad Max Fury Road a bit. Moving on.
Mm. Supergirl is a perfect example of how. Oh, sorry. Okay. Sad truth is that even in comic book spaces, that should be more evolved than other media landscapes. Women actors, writers, artists, and directors still have to do 3 times the work to get a fraction of the credit. An exponentially expanding virtual landscape where the lowest common denominator is courted and women are targeted. We're going to continue to see these stories play out.
No one had any problems whatsoever with Wonder Woman. Pretty much everyone loved that movie, justifiably, because it was a really, really fucking good movie. And wouldn't you know it, its protagonist and central conceit satisfied both the rule of cool and the rule of pretty. So I think no, stay with me here. I think maybe if you want female-centric stories that people like, you should endeavor to, make them this thing called what was it? Oh yes, again, likable. You can do a likable asshole of the RDJ fucking Iron Man or Hancock vein, but a likable asshole still needs to be primarily likable, or you're just going to wind up with the dick that your audience roots against. And no, giving them a vag does not automatically make them more likable than their male counterparts. Sorry, intersectional feminist brainlet. That's a personality merits being a woman ain't. Moving on.
Supergirl is a perfect example of how toxic creators have ruined the experience of anticipating seeing a comic book movie, spewing out a steady stream of negativity, speculation, rumor mongering, and doom forecasting. By constantly needing to compete in the oversaturated market, it's not really oversaturated, they build their brands on grievance, creating even more incendiary content and engendering so much hatred toward a film before it's even out that it doesn't have a chance to be received on its own merits.
They do that sometimes. Again, look at what they did with Multiverse of Madness. Look at what they did with Agatha all along. But for every time they've gotten it wrong, some of the time, like with Masters of the Universe, because they were expecting that to be terrible as well. Some of the time, they actually admit that they were wrong, like with Masters of the Universe, and some of the time, well, sadly, a larger percentage of the time, they're just correct. Unfortunately, they're often not correct for the reasons they think they're correct, because a lot of times they pull the whole "why is a B or C or D list character getting a movie derp?" Or "who was this movie made for derp?" But even insofar as they're not always right for the reasons they think they're right, some of the time they are right. Though they were right about the Acolyte, they were right about Ironheart, they were right about She-Hulk, they were right about Velma. Whether we like it or not, they were correct at those things. They were wrong about Multiverse of Madness, and they were wrong about Agatha all along. But just because they do over egg it and get it wrong sometimes doesn't mean they're immoral. It just means they're dumb. That's the thing. You need every criticism you have against the likes of Critical Drinker to be a moral invective instead of just a criticism or a "hey, he gets it wrong sometimes." And that's where you fail. You try to make a moral argument, and then when people don't respond to your moral argument with moral outrage, you start calling them immoral, and then they start hating you. And then you get surprised when you engender hatred, that people respond to you engendering hatred with hatred. It's like Annie Sarkeesian. When she said everything about mainstream games is immoral, and a whole bunch of gamers went, "Hold on there, bitch. What do you mean mainstream gaming is immoral?" And then she cried harassment. That you don't get to be a contemptible jackass and then be surprised when people treat you with the responding contempt. Moving on.
I'm just trying to. Okay, combine that with the reality. Combine that with the reality that 90% of these creators are dudes or women trying to draw their gaze, and a female-led superhero movie faces impossible scrutiny. So girl didn't fall, at least not completely. She simply burned up in the manosphere.
No, she fell. It's just that the manosphere was also reacting to it. And so when it was bad, a lot of them said, "I told you so," because they did call it months or even years in advance. I called it months or years in advance. But as stated, I would have been happy if I was wrong. I was terrified that they were going to ruin Black Adam. They didn't. I was terrified they were going to fuck up Multiverse Madness. They didn't. I was terrified they were going to fuck up Agatha all along. They didn't. I not only can admit when I'm wrong, I'm often very, very happy when I'm wrong, because it doesn't feel good to always be the guy who could see the writing on the wall and ends up being the doomsaying soothsayer. I like being wrong about such things, but some of the time, I'm right about such things. And while it brings me no pleasure to be right about such things, that doesn't change the fact that I was indeed right about them.
Okay. Just give me a second. Also, okay, giant turtle. Rule cool is usually used to excuse or justify stuff, so I pushed for the rule of pretty to be renamed the pretty pass. Also applies IRL things / people who are attractive or aesthetically pleasing get favorites or things / ideas if they are cool. Yes, men can be dismissed outright, and women aiding with them are just traitorous grifters. Probably also say the men are grifting, but they just want patriarchy, and the reasons they say are lies or something.
Yep. People don't really understand what the word grifting means. It means like disingenuous, knowing falsehood. And I don't think I I, I attribute this to what I call framework blindness. People for whatever reason, when they can't understand someone else's like philosophical or ideological framework, they assume disingenuity rather than a different philosophical framework. And I think that's part of the issue here. They cannot a lot of people, especially in the intelligentsia class, are so trapped in their ivory tower bubble that they cannot imagine other ways of thinking as valid. They cannot imagine other ideological frameworks that are internally consistent and therefore non-disingenuous. So whenever they see someone making an argument outside of their framework, they assume a level of disingenuity rather than simply people operating by a different philosophical frame. That said, I do think the EFAP crowd does get punch drunk, and I do think it sometimes leads them to be disingenuous. There are cases like Multiverse of Madness, like Agatha All Along, where they did not give the thing in question a chance. They did not actually engage with the material they were presented with. They predisposed themselves to dislike it, and so they looked for any minor nitpick to dislike it. So I will admit I have caught people like Gary from Neurotic and the Critical Drinker being disingenuous from time to time. But I think it's just when you're in the middle of the culture war trenches, you get a little bit punch drunk sometimes. I don't think it's them trying to be disingenuous. I think it's just they consume. It's much in the same way as I think a lot of the ideological warping of the critical class in general happens. When you are in the political or ideological trenches of entertainment journalism all the time, and you don't get long enough to take a fucking break, you are going to get jaded. You are going to get cynical. You are going to over egg your point too much, and it is going to backfire on you. But that's just as true of the mainstream critical class, especially of the art school educated academic side of the critical class, as it is of Critical Drinker, if not more. So there's only so much I can wag my finger at Critical Drinker and company being disingenuous when I know the critical academically approved authoritative journalism TM class are more than guilty of their share of it, and they get treated like the experts. So in that fight, I'd usually rather side with the Critical Drinker class because at least they're not being treated as a intellectual and moral authority on the matter, whereas the art school educated post academia critical class is treated like an expert class, is treated like a moral class. Therefore, I'm going to judge you harsher on the grounds of your lack of intellectual honesty and morality if you are given authority over the topics of intellectualism and or morality.
Okay, you said some stuff. Hold on. All right. Some of these people have actually come up with ways for the entirety of their enemies to be all grifters. For instance, they say writers all grifters who know what they are saying is BS, even the foot soldiers, but that they view it as like a get rich scheme, in that if they persecute other people, then they can be rich and powerful and important. And of course, then he said women are already siding with them are Then Pick Me's hoping he gets some of that pie
And of
too,
course, yeah, the
or at least
internalized misogynies.
avoid some of the persecution by throwing the fellows under the bus.
Yeah, it can't possibly be that intersectional feminism is a post-Frankfurt School critical theory dogma of bullshit that almost no men or women of any kind side with, but it has the stamp of approval of academia and morality on it. Therefore, it can't possibly be wrong, except for all the times it's wrong and all the things it's done that have been wrong, both morally and factually. But never mind. Whistle, whistle, nothing to see here.
Moving on.
Yep.
All right. So just for the record, you can check the link if you want, but for some reason, my computer, being as old as it is, shut up, Dalton. I can't show the article for whatever reason. I have no idea. So I'm going to be reading it off my phone, just so you guys aren't just staring at our icons. I will have an image popped up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's originally from the HollywoodReporter.com, published July 3rd, 2026. Behind the Supergirl bomb, competing cuts, creative differences, exclusive. It's written by Boris Kitt. For months, DC Studios knew the film wasn't working. Things came to a head in March when the studio tested its own cuts against one from filmmaker Craig Gillespie. Okay, that fucking shit. That feels like that feels like Marvel, right? Like that.
Warner Brothers. Well, Warner Brothers has been doing this kind of shit since like 2013. They've been doing this kind of shit since fucking Man of Steel.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Also, again, just to remind people, when our 400 episode comes around, I am going to be talking about basically my abandoned project of how I would redo the DCEU, and I've led Dalton in on some stuff, infinitely better. And that's me not. And that's not. I'm not even trying to be like
that's
boastful.
Not us saying we're brilliant. That's us saying that the people currently in charge of Hollywood are cunts and hacks.
Yeah, and I want to keep that. I also want to keep this in mind. Again, it's an abandoned project, and like most of the ideas are half formed. Still very. Anyway, sorry. Okay. Usually test scores go up and away, but this March the scores for Supergirl actually went down when DC Studios held a bake-off testing competing cuts from filmmaker Craig Gillespie from the studio run by James Gunn and Peter Safran. It was a moment of extreme disappointment for those involved as the stakes were high, particularly for DC. Supergirl would be a key test for the Warner Brothers division as its first feature not written and directed by Gunn following last year's inaugural outing, Superman. Again, I think it could have worked if I don't know if it was him, the studio, that were mandating that it be more in line with like James Gunn kind of style.
Yeah, if Craig Gillespie was actually allowed to play by his own sensibilities, I think it would have come out better.
Yeah,
still might not have been a good movie, but I think it would have been a better movie.
Yeah. I mean, I can see using Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which I'm kind of curious to read now. Given I've heard it's a pretty good story and how better it is than the adaptation of it, basically.
Yeah, I saw a video of Angry Joe comparing the Supergirl movie to the comic it's supposedly based on. And he had one of those old school Channel Awesome chimp outs that I felt in my soul.
I think, again, like the pitch we had also come up with, which basically kind of still kept the same concept, sort of, of Woman of Tomorrow, but it kind of went its own direction, you know? Having Supergirl be trapped on World. You know, if you were doing the whole Guardians of the Galaxy thing, kind of.
Yeah, and setting up the sort of cosmic side of DC by way of also giving her a team to bounce off of, considering
Yeah.
James Gunn
Plus, I also want to point this out.
cannot do a solo movie to save his life, apparently.
I also want to point this out. Suicide Squad, the Suicide Squad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Had Mongal in it, which I believe is Mongol's sister.
Yeah. So there's that.
Plus, having the little child be Starfire. Who came up with that?
I think it was a group effort. I think you mentioned something, and then I poked it, and then Starfire was the result.
Yeah. If you guys want to figure out what we're talking about, check
the episode where we reviewed it. I think that's where we got off into the weeds of the 1,001 ways it could have been done better.
Yeah. Anyway, anything more to add to what I just read? Or
No, it's
Okay.
just not surprising that Warner Brothers is their own worst enemy. They've been that way since 2013.
seriously, I don't understand it.
They don't respect or understand the IPs they're working with, and they have no desire to understand.
Okay. Giant by the way, you guys plan on reviewing the Odyssey. Everything I heard says it's probably shit, except one reviewer I like who said it was good, so would like some more opinions. Bring it up because now Angry Joe is flipping out about defending this movie. I'm gonna be honest, I thought it was coming out in December.
Nope. It's coming out this weekend. This weekend is the weekend it came out.
I need to talk. Well, you mean this weekend as in right now or next week?
It is out. It is out now. It is currently
I
in the
need
process
to-
of its opening weekend.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I was never really interested in watching it. It didn't look appealing, obviously, because we've seen the trailers here. But
I'm of two minds on it, because on the one hand, I don't want to have to sit through 3 hours of Christopher Nolanizing.
I'm sorry, it's 3 hours?
Yes. And it's told out of order, like Memento and like Man of Steel and.
Okay, so what was it? Shit, what the fuck was it? Yeah, I need to talk to. Well,
his uncle who he goes to see movies with.
Yeah, I just totally forgot. Again, I thought it came out like with Dune. For whatever reason,
Nope. Comes out this weekend.
Okay. Yeah. I'll bring that up. Just yeah, it slipped my mind.
As much as I don't want to subject myself to 3 hours of Nolan butchering the greatest mythological adventure story in the history of the Western canon, I also really want to rip it a new asshole. So
okay, so it may be a minute because I kind of have a packed week. So I'm unsure when I'll be able to see it. So we will probably have to hold off on the review for a moment.
Mm-hmm. We will probably review it though.
No, yeah, we will probably review it. If it does take a bit, we might just do a double review with Odyssey and Brand New Day.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think
it's
fair to say that Brand New Day will probably be the better of the two.
That's not saying much.
No, but it is worth noting.
Yeah, Giant Turtle. I thought they were doing a Barbenheimer. I've not seen either of those movies either. They did not interest me.
They're already trying to do a Barbenheimer with Avengers Doomsday and Dune. I hate Dune. I hate Dune largely because Denis Villeneuve is basically Christopher Nolan's mini-me. And
anyway.
I that's another one of those source materials that I love that they completely butchered for the sake of pretension as an aesthetic.
Anyway. God damn it.
Yeah,
Listen,
moving on.
fuck. Okay. It needed to work to prove the studio could expand beyond projects directed by Gunn, A-list filmmaker behind the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, Peacemaker, and the Suicide Squad, the very public face of the brand, for better or for worse. Months later, the Supergirl outcome is now well known. The movie, starring Millie Alcock as the title character and budgeted in the $170 million to $180 million range, crashed and burned its opening weekend, grossing just $37.1 million, even lower than the reviled DC-centric bomb 2024's Joker Folie à Deux, which opened to a $37.6 million and was not made by Gunn and Safran. Okay, I feel like that last part. Why does that matter?
As of right now, it has not even hit 120 million worldwide yet. It may do by the end of this weekend, but it's also due to open in the 10th place in the worldwide top 10 already. It fell below Obsession last week by like 2 places. Obsession that's been out for like almost 3 months now. So there is that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It'd be very lucky to even make its budget back, much less break even at this point. Anyway, not Obsession. Obsession is making all the money. Supergirl is what I meant when I said that.
There. And while one failure need not be an indictment of a slate, there have been all sort of think pieces as to whether maybe failed. Is Alcott right for the role? I think she is. Honestly, she looks and kind of. I think she embodies Supergirl. Again, it's just like she wasn't given the right material.
Yeah, I don't blame her for what's wrong with Supergirl.
Okay. Oh no, and let me read through the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Was Gillespie Was Gillespie right for the take? Again, I think so. I just think he was kind of fucked over, or might have been too concerned with emulating Gunn.
Yeah, and it's also arguable that James Gunn told him to do that, in which case I blame James Gunn a bit, but I mostly blame Warner Brothers, because Warner Brothers have been their own IP's worst enemy since 2013, and it doesn't appear like that's changing. Which is sad, because that means this cinematic universe is speedrunning failure even faster than the Snyderverse did. Which just why?
Wondering if I could do a short document of how I do it. To be fair, I've talked about how I would do the DCU, just like first phase or slate or whatever you call it, I guess.
Yeah.
But
my gut would go to, you want to call this phase Gods and Monsters? Fine. I'm gonna need to see some gods and some monsters then.
Well, I was going
to be the central point of the thing, but
I was only with well, for one thing, make it very distinctly, clearly different from the Snyderverse, right?
Yeah.
Sorry if I'm going on a tangent here then. But well, obviously, I think we discussed how doing the Superman thing. I've explained a few times, which like it's mainly just changing minor things that kind of culminate to a different movie. Like the opening where you show Superman actually stopping the war instead of being told via text.
Mm-hmm.
Taking Gurkos, the president of Baravia.
Yeah, or Baradia, I think. Baradia.
I think they say it both ways.
I believe you're right. They do, I think.
Either way, I've seen a reference. This is specifically a reference to one of the original Superman comics by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. During World War II, where they
yoink.
Yeah. Because, well, I mean, if this is going to be more a very comic booky universe, like on DC Universe in live action,
then let's go with that.
Yeah. And plus, I think it's also like comparative as well. If you're doing that homage to that specific issue, where you have him take a dictator from his country and fly him to the UN to face the crime, face judgment and trial for his crimes.
It also shows just how committed to nonviolence Clark is, because he knows nothing can hurt him, really.
Yeah. Plus, any superhero movie, mostly, like we're talking traditional superhero, right?
Mm-hmm.
You gotta do an open action scene.
You do. Or at least some intriguing opening. It doesn't necessarily have to
be. I'm not saying like, you don't have to do like, but I'm just saying like it's got to be something that pops.
But you have to have a hook.
Yeah. And I think, again, it does boil down to the rule of showing, not telling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I also decided, which I was right, have the Elite also be like kind of the major antagonistic force. I mean, on a story level, Lex Luthor is obviously the antagonist, but the Elite, well, for one thing, they also operate as a mirror to like the Justice
ideological counter to Superman. Which, given that the quote unquote socio-political context and the ideological elements of Superman were the centerpiece of Superman 25 anyway, use the Elite for what they're for, which is precisely this. And hell, have them be funded by Lex.
Yeah, there was because I think, because I was choosing specifically. Obviously, I do Manchester Rat because he was kind of the face of the Elite, obviously.
Yeah.
And the most widely known character of that team. Then, obviously, keep the Engineer, because I actually really like that actress in that role. It was pretty cool.
Right.
Are you?
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna keep the Clone, but I was gonna change him from Ultraman because that's a whole different character entirely, and I feel like that was kind of instead do Superior Man. Yeah, but you do Superior Man, which was a Superman clone from Superman Red Sun that was created by the U.S. government to fight, the Soviet Union Superman.
And created by Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
And he turns out to be Bizarro.
Yeah. Plus, you just add honestly, you can keep the costume mostly. I mean, I'd simplify it a bit more, but you can keep the mask and add a cape, and you can do. I just really dig the Superior Man symbol that they created, which was, it's like the very classic Golden Age shield, but instead of it just being an S, it's US.
Yeah. Not to mention, and I don't know if you originally intended to keep this, but I'm going to throw this in here because this is one of the ideas that I came up with all the way back when we were reviewing Superman 25, and I really wish they had gone with it, because one of James Gunn's biggest things here was how the media misrepresents shit and is adversarial and essentially what we on the internet refer to as the dirty smear merchant syndrome. So given that, instead of having Clark be interviewed by Lois, who is the most sympathetic interviewer he could possibly ever have him be adversarially interviewed by Livewire.
Oh yeah, we put Livewire on there. I remember that, as part of the Elite, because for one thing, her original character was a shock jock reporter.
Yeah, so make her like a Howard Stern meets InfoWars, like oppositional podcaster type.
Yeah, which I kind of did actually, and well, to be fair, she was created for Superman the Animated Series, and that's how that worked. But radio person, but yeah, basically same thing.
Yeah. And actually have her be adversarial to him, so that if you want to keep his chimp out, it's actually more earned.
Right. Also, yeah, that's a really cool idea, Giant Turtle. Sorry, I noticed he wrote that, but we were like, I was really engulfed in what I was talking about. So, Superman pulls a Pillar Man from JoJo, but instead of killing a bunch of soldiers, he disarms them and bends their own rifles into cuffs for them. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is a neat idea.
It's campy, but it's also like, I think it's really
it is something Clark would do, and it underlines the qualities that I think epitomize him the most, which are purity and innocence. He genuinely just wants the best for everyone, even his villains. I've made this point when we were discussing, or when we were reacting to the Lotus Eater's misunderstanding of Superman, but I think it's somewhat telling that Clark's best friend within the context of the League, which is Batman, has more in common with his worst enemy villain, i.e. Lex Luthor, than he does with Clark himself. And the reason I think that's important is because it shows that Clark actually not only can he value someone whose philosophical outlook is diametrically opposed to his, but he actually values that. He actually likes having people who think differently from him that he can go and take advice from. He values having Bruce there, not only because it's one of his best friends, but also specifically because Clark on some level knows that he's just a simple boy from Kansas trying to do good, and that sometimes being a simple boy from Kansas trying to do good isn't going to be enough for given situations. But that shows that if Lex earnestly tried to go the Batman route, how you could even give him the Lex power armor. If Lex earnestly tried to go the Batman route, Clark would welcome him with open arms. In fact, one might even argue that that's what Clark has been waiting for this entire time. That's why the one line from, I think it's Superman versus the Elite, but it might not be, if saving the world actually mattered to you, Luthor, you could have done it years ago.
All-Star Superman.
Yeah, I think that's particularly sad because it's not just Clark passing judgment on him. It is to some degree, but it's also Clark being disappointed in Lex because Clark knows that can happen because his best work friend is fucking Batman, who, much like Lex Luthor, at least post 80s businessman Lex Luthor, is a Ayn Randian style self-made industrialist super genius. Batman and Lex have so much in common with each other and so much not in common with Clark. And I think it is telling that his best work friend on the planet or in the universe is someone who is basically identical to what his worst enemy would be like if his worst enemy went good. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. And while one failure need not to be an indictment of the slate. Oh, I did read that.
You may have done, but I don't remember. Go ahead.
Okay. And there have been all sort of think pieces as to why the movie failed. Okay, no, I did read that. Okay. What? Our audience is tired of superheroes. No, they are not. We literally covered that last week with like a whole article. We're not really gonna...
No. If the superhero genre is dying, it is dying of its own incompetence. It's not dying because it was some preordained, naturally inevitable thing. It's dying because people could have put in effort and they didn't, and then they kept not doing it. And so now even the good stuff ends up performing mid because people have been burned by so many meh to bad examples that that now all is fucked. A rising tide raises all ships, a lowering tide consequently sounders them. Moving on.
All right. Was the budget too high? I don't know. I don't really have information to answer that. Was opening the movie in late June a mistake? I mean,
if you had made a good movie, no. If you had made a movie that could actually stand on its own merits, no. But you didn't. And if you had marketed it well instead of basically going about as mid as you could possibly go and throwing some controversies into the mix for good measure, or for bad measure in this case, that probably also would have helped. But you didn't. It's much like the thing we were just talking about. If making a good superhero movie mattered to you, Warner Brothers, you could have done it years ago.
Yeah. Supergirl might have been seeded early on. Gunn and Gillespie had creative differences over the direction of the movie. Numerous sources tell the Hollywood Reporter, and the film never found its footing in the post-production process. The test scores, which are counted on a scale out of 100 points, never escaped the 60s, according to multiple insiders. Another insider said the movie's top score was 70. They were not creatively aligned, is the polite way of describing things, said one insider.
The sensible thing would have been move it till later and wait until you actually have some kind of creative synergy going. Because I'm not even begrudging you these creative differences. I am begrudging you moving ahead with them anyway. Because James, when you are one of the co-presidents of the studio, it's your job to go, now wait a minute, maybe there's still potential here, but maybe we should save it for later. Now, part of the reason I'm suggesting this is because I've been saying for years that doing Supergirl immediately following Superman was a mistake.
Well, okay.
But especially if you're having these kind of creative issues, do what's right by your universe and by your studio, Mr. President, and make the executive decision. Okay, until we can figure out how to do this right, we're going to save it. Until we can get these kinks worked out, it's better to save it than release a bomb.
I mean, I was going to say this, and I've mentioned it sometimes when we've talked about Superman 2025. I would say replace Hawkgirl with Supergirl, so she has more time to breathe, and like we get more sense of her character.
Especially since the Hawkgirl we got isn't even Shayera, which, why the fuck?
I mean, I would have made it basically like a prototype super family, you know. I think I mentioned like replace, like I like Nathan Fillion as as Green Lantern. Obviously, we've all talked about like how we prefer.
Should be Hal rather than Guy. Yes, we've all been there and done that so many times, and it's one of the most baffling decisions they've made.
But I would have done. I mean, I would have kept Mr. Terrific, obviously, because he was like pretty much a standout in that movie. But I would have done Steel and Supergirl to be part of the Justice Gang or whatever you want to call them. Anyway, continue or
yeah.
Okay. Other outside dispute this characterization, stating Gunn, Safran, and Gillespie had the normal amount of healthy friction any filmmaker and studio have as part of the process to make a movie better. The multiple sources say the duo respect the filmmaking chops of Gillespie, known for guiding Margot Robbie to an Oscar nomination for I, Tonya.
Okay, here's the thing, though. While I understand what they're getting at, and a balance between the studio and the creative end is a good thing, this, again, maybe me being naive or me just hoping for better standards for Hollywood, but you shouldn't be okay with friction just as the rule, because friction implies conflict. And conflict isn't what you should be aiming for. You should be aiming for, and not to toot our own horn here again, but something similar to what me and Brainstorm have. We are very different people with very different strengths when it comes to creativity. But rather than let that drive wedges between us, we use each other's respective strengths to each other's benefit, and it ends up with better product than either of us could create by ourselves. That's what you should have. It shouldn't be a friction between the creatives and the studio. It should be a springboard, a sounding board for ideas. So even accepting friction as the norm may be a large part of your problem, Warner Brothers. If you think it's okay for you and the creatives you hire to constantly be at each other's throats, that might go on to explain why you've been digging yourself into this incomprehensibly deep hole since 2013. Moving on.
All right. Filming wrapped in May 2025, and as early as the fall of that year, the studio and Gillespie knew the movie wasn't working. After December test screening proved to be just okay, the studio decided to take matters into its own hands and took charge of the post-production to make its own cut. The studio also enlisted writer Jeremy Slater, a Gunn favorite, who previously wrote an unmade feature based on DC superhero team, The Authority. Okay, the fact that it's an unmade thing isn't exactly isn't it doesn't build up confidence.
Mm-hmm. And you're right, DT. Guy Gardner probably is the better Green Lantern for James Gunn. But that's why you shouldn't have the quintessential fan casting for Hal Jordan being forced to play James Gunn. If anything, the smart move would have been, and the redemptive move would have been, much like how Deadpool, as they used him in X-Men Origins Wolverine, was a terrible thing, but Deadpool in the actual Deadpool movies was an amazing thing. You should have brought back Ryan Reynolds as Guy Gardner and redeemed two birds with one stone, because Ryan Reynolds can play the likable asshole, and he should probably have been Guy Gardner all along, just based on matching the kind of actor Ryan Reynolds is to the kind of character that he excels at playing. That's what they should have done. If you've decided that Guy Gardner needs to be our first Green Lantern, that's fine, especially for James Gunn. But don't put a fan casting for Hal Jordan in the role of Guy Gardner. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Well, that is completely counterintuitive and is likely to bite you in the ass, like it did.
Right. I also want to point out Nathan Fillion, fantastic actor. He played a character in a Joss Whedon show, Firefly, Captain Malcolm.
Yeah, Mal.
Reynolds, or
I believe so. I believe it's Mal Reynolds. Yes.
Yeah. who very much was very much like a Hal Jordan.
Yes.
Um,
Basically every role Nathan Fillion has pretty much ever done, whether it be Captain Hammer, whether it be Richard Castle on Castle, every role he's played has basically been an audition for Hal. That's one of the reasons why everyone defaults to him being Hal.
Well, he voiced Hal many times in DC animated projects.
Yes, because he also
and it just
he also is a massive nerd who himself is very aware of the fan casting. And has leaned into the fan casting more than once because he himself, I think, thinks he can do a pretty good job as Hal Jordan, and he's right.
Anyway, the extent of Slater's involvement is unclear, although it seems he helped write scenes for a 9-day shoot of additional photography. Original screenwriter Anna Negreto remained involved in the post-production process as well. One issue at play was the climactic fight, which reconfigured. Other issues with the movie are unclear, but it is known that music was a key friction point from his first Guardians of the Galaxy movie on. Gunn established himself as a master of the movie soundtrack and an all-important needle drop, earning praise for finding the right song and playing it at the right time. Gillespie also has a reputation for melding to movies, as seen in Cruella, his 2021 movie with that cast Disney villainess Cruella de Vil as a punk rock rebel in London's fashion scene.
And that's also fine. But in the vein of the right track at the right time, Girls Just Want to Have Fun belongs in the beginning montage when Kara's getting drunk. It doesn't belong in the final fight scene. And I'm not even convinced that Guardian-style needle drops needed to be a thing in Supergirl at all, much like his insistence on bringing it into Superman also made me go, ha. Because the reason why it worked for Peter Quill was because there was things justifying it being a thing for Peter Quill. No such justification was forthcoming in either Superman 25 or in Supergirl. It's just because James Gunn. And while because James Gunn is a good reason for many things, if you're gonna do it, James, you're gonna have to do it right. And frankly, for Clark Kent, for a Superman movie, I would have gone with more like classic Americana 50s, 60s needle drops.
Yeah.
Something like something you'd see in like a Jimmy Stewart movie. That's what I would go with.
Who the fuck is Jimmy Stewart?
Oh God, you young. Oh child. Jimmy Stewart of It's a Wonderful Life, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Bell Book and Kent. He's basically like, if there was a real world Clark Kent who decided to be an actor instead of a reporter in like the early 1900s, it's Jimmy Stewart.
I've never heard any of those movies.
Oh, child.
I'm fucking with you.
I can never tell with you because your exposure rate to certain things is so fucking completely haphazard.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you about that. It just is what it is.
But yeah, like
I'm gonna be honest. I don't agree with that, and I think you're really stuck in this weird like thing, Superman. I do agree. Like the needle drops didn't work. Could have been better. I'm sure there are other songs better suited for him, but I wouldn't go as far back as that.
I mean, just like fan service wise, the fact that they used neither the Smallville title song or Five for Fighting's Superman will never be okay, ever. They didn't use those. Like if you're gonna do needle drop musical fan service and you insist on it being modern for no explicable reason, you could have at least thrown us a bone and done both of those.
All right. Anyway, we had at least 4 test screenings according to sources, with screenings held in December 25th, 2025, December 2025, as well as February and March of this year. And while social media users and critics are dunking on the movie's use of a cover of the Jimmy Eat World song, The Middle, big needle drop in the final set piece at the February screening was a cover version of Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun. That song choice came from Gunn, but it ultimately was abandoned for the Jimmy Eat World cover.
And again, I don't mind that song being in a Supergirl movie. It makes sense for it to be, especially in the sense of she's covering her grief over the loss of her planet with, party girling and drinking. But it belongs in the first act when she's party girling and drinking, not in the final act when she's fighting. I would, if I were to pluck a pop song out of the air that could have fit better for the final fight scene, Boots Are Made for Walking is probably what I would have gone with. We lose Brainstormer?
No, I wasn't sure if you had more to say, so.
Yeah, Boots Were Made for Walking would have been good. I think Pretty Woman would have been good to use somewhere. I don't know where. I wouldn't have made it in the final fight scene either, but I think Pretty Woman would have been good. Material Girl also would have been good. Like there are these like women having fun hoorah type songs you very easily could have used, and it stuns and baffles me that they didn't. And even using Girls Just Want to Have Fun, as I stated, is fine, but it goes in the first act when she's covering her grief and her like nihilism with party girling rather than the pivotal fucking fight scene.
All right. Movie employed 2 editors. There was Tatiana S. Regal, Gillespie's longtime post partner, who edited his Lars and the Real Girl, I, Tonya, and Umbrella. And there was Fred Raskin, Gunn's longtime cutter, who worked on all the Guardians of the Galaxy movies and Gunn's DC series Peacemaker. Raskin is also Quentin Tarantino's go-to editor.
Yeah, why wasn't it just Raskin the whole way through? Why did we even fuck around with these other ones? We know Raskin can work with Gunn's sensibilities. Why was it anyone else? Sorry, go ahead.
First editor was Craig Gillespie's, who worked on Cruella and all his other movies. So that was the original editor. The studio brought in Raskin.
Either way, either one could have worked. I think the sensible option would have just been to pick one or maybe have them collab. And again, I know I'm a broken record when it comes to collaborations, but God, use the resources at your disposal. And sometimes if one person can give you part of what you want and the other person can give you the other part of what you want, combine them by having them work together, God damn it.
Okay. Later in the process, improved a key instrument in DC Studios' slowly heavying hand. There were signs that things were getting better. Deep into winter, test scores improved and hit the low 70s. However, rather than continue to tinker away on that cut. The studio decided to force a bake-off by creating two cuts, one by Gillespie and one by the studio. It's unclear what major differences emerged, but one source says Gillespie's version was 11 minutes longer and featured more of the villain Krim, played by Matthias Schoenhertz. When the two competing versions tested, the score surprisingly dropped significantly, although studios inched out ahead of Gillespie's, but only by 2 points, according to the sources. Gillespie's version scored strongly on song choices, pacing, and villain. I hate this focus group shit. I really do.
See, the focus group is inevitable because for some reason the people who own studios don't like watching movies, even though they're in the fucking movie business. But here's the thing. I would have been more interested in seeing Gillespie's version. And one of the biggest complaints I've seen across the board is Frem is just a nothing character in the version we got. So I'm willing to believe that Gillespie's the better there. But I'm also gonna point this out. If neither of them got above a 70, delay the movie until you get the kinks worked out. Again, James, I know you're used to working on the creative end, but your job is now the studio head, and the studio head has to make these kind of decisions. If you can't get a movie that's above a fucking passing grade with the audience that you get into test screen, then you need to be an adult and go, okay, I wanted Supergirl to be next, but it seems like we still got some work to do. We'll move it ahead a couple of years and see if we can't get it worked out in the interim. And that's the other thing.
Years.
Stop rushing these. You need to stop rushing these. You need to stop doing 2 movies a freaking year. It clearly nerfs your creative process. You need to learn to take your fucking time so that when we get the next movie, it will be a movie worth having. Yeah, I would push it maybe 3 years into the future and call it a day. Like, make it come out after Swamp Thing. That's probably would have been the call I would have made.
Yeah, well, I doubt that's how that works. I would assume like by a few months at least.
I don't think they could have unfucked it in a few months.
I'm just saying logically that's what they would try to do. Okay,
Yeah,
I don't
and it would fuck them just like it did.
Okay, I don't agree with it myself. I'm just saying logically that is what they're fucking going to do.
Yeah, but again, it would fuck them, and that would be the wrong call. Which is why
I'm not disagreeing with you. We're not in charge. That's just the thing.
At some point, someone has to make the reasonable and rational rather than convenient decision when the convenient decision keeps repeatedly creating Grand Canyon-sized holes in the plot.
Again, was not disagreeing with you. I'm just pointing out because they are fucking morons. They're just going to postpone it. I would say maybe by, on average, 5 months.
And probably fix nothing, and we'll be right back here.
Okay. We don't have to keep doing the circle. Again, I agree with you. I'm just saying almost always that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and almost always it goes horribly wrong. Moving on.
Okay. Hold on. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I didn't lose my space.
Mm-hmm.
Or my place. Okay. Okay. Yeah. eking out a win, even a middling one. The studio chose its cut as the one to go into theaters. A studio insider says the differences were not particularly pronounced. Um, Studio insiders paint the back and forth process as routine, but others, including one franchise filmmaker who spoke anonymously for this story, but was not involved in Supergirl, held the opposite view. It happens more than you think, but it's not normal, said the filmmaker at the Bake Off. If a studio is going to put money into the test process, it means they feel strongly about certain things. The movie was never tested again. As a point of comparison, the canceled Batgirl tested in the 60s, and the box office disappointment Shazam Fury of the Gods began its test in the 60s, like most of Supergirl's tests, before moving up. From that point on, if Gillespie believed strongly that something should be in the movie, he had to advocate for it, said one source.
Yeah, again, Warner Brothers, you are your own worst enemy here. Please just think these things through. That's like, I ask a lot of things because I genuinely think it would be better for you. But in this instance, that is the bare minimum of things I'm going to ask. Think these things through and take your fucking time, because in taking your fucking time to do it the right way, you will get much better results than trying to, again, speed run right to Avengers level after 5 fucking minutes. I know you really want to just skip to the end so you can get that sweet, sweet Avengers money, but clearly the skip to the end and get us to the Avengers level didn't work last time. It didn't work the intervening time when you tried to soft bring JSA into Black Adam, although that probably would have if you didn't, friendly fire it to death. So stop trying to speed run shit and do it the good old fashioned nuts and bolts, taking your time way. Moving on.
Okay. Okay. While Supergirl didn't meet our box office expectations, it's just one component of a broader long-term strategy at DC Studios that we remain confident in. Safran to the New York Times, marking a rare time a studio chief commented on a bomb on opening weekend. And in many times, the strategy remains intact. Despite the setback, Gunn and Safran will continue to guide the ship. It is unclear when the duo's contracts are up, but sources believe it is either to the end of 2026 or the end of 2027. By then, DC Studios will have released not only Clay, a modestly budgeted horror movie centered on the Batman villain, but also Man of Tomorrow, which Gunn is currently directing and which is slated to open July 9th, 2026. The Batman Part 2 from Matt Reeves is also in production and has an October 2027 date, but stands separate from the DCU. Okay, I saw this test footage, and it looks like he's in the snow, so
returning to potential Batman Christmas movie for the first time since Returns.
Say that one more time.
Are we returning to a Batman Christmas movie for the first time since Returns?
Maybe, or it's just set during winter.
I would really like to get back into the quasi Christmas mold again, because I really like Batman Returns. I grew up on Batman Returns. But I will say this again because it's still true, and time is not making it come any less true. How much money? So someone at Warner Brothers Accounting figure this out. How much money is it gonna take for you to give it to Matt Reeves so that he gets over himself and incorporates his Batman into the universe. Because the prospect of having two live-action Batmans in varying degrees of canonicity going at once in an already clearly vulnerable universe is even by the standards and the rate by which Warner Brothers fucks things up, that is possibly the single stupidest idea they've had since Man of Steel. And it's an even stupider idea than Man of Steel. So please, someone, for the love of all that is holy, in the name of the Lords of Order and the Spectre and all the fucking cosmological entities of the DC universe, someone please do the math, figure out how much money we have to give to Matt Reeves to get the fuck over himself and make his Batman the canon version.
You know what's funny? I mean, I'm not going to go into specifics here, but Dolan will know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. I've effectively made a superhero that's effectively Matt Reeves' Batman.
You have?
And I've teamed him up with Superman. And the dynamic there is really interesting. Dolan's weirded out by it for whatever reason. I don't get it, but...
I can't go into specifics because it is a thing that we are trying to keep under wraps on the basis that it's part of our, if the Lionhearted is our take on the Marvel Universe, this other thing that we are referring to is our take on the DC Universe. And so, out of respect for Brainstormer's desire to not potentially get pilfered, I will say no more. But yes, it is weird because there's a generation gap where there probably shouldn't be. But that's a different story.
No, I'm not doing super bad, you degenerate motherfuckers out there. Because that's pretty much my entire... That's pretty much our entire... That's anyone who watches this show, honestly. Except for me for some reason, which I find odd.
To be fair, we are in Lionhearted teaming up a Superman alike with a very dark, very shadowy individual. So there is we're already checking that box for those that are interested in that box having been checked. It's not a 1-to-1, and it's not something that occurred to me until just right now, but if you need that particular fan service to be serviced, Lionhearted.
Look. Anyway, but yeah, honestly, I'm gonna be fully honest, and I know tangent, and we'll finish this. And honestly, I feel like just, well, I'm gonna be honest with you, fellas, folks. I've been up since like 4:30 in the morning. I took a brief nap, but I'm still tired.
He was tired before we came on air. I did explicitly offer that we didn't have to do it tonight. He insisted on continuing anyway. So there is that.
Yeah. But fuck, what was I gonna say? No, yeah, I mean, and we brought this up many times. And while I will somewhat respect Matt Reeves wanting to not like, I can understand, given he's been very meticulous about trying to create everything for the Batman, like his kind of pocket of the universe. I still don't agree with like just basically saying no, like hard no, all that. But the issue is visually and stylistically, even his Batman works so fantastically well.
Oh yeah, it's the first Batman since like Keaton that actually plays up the like noir detective adjacent aspect of Batman.
That and well, okay, there was a weird contention people had when saying no, that the Batman should not be part of the DCU. Like it looks so visually different from anything else.
You mean like a lot of the best MCU movies did?
Which also, I want to point this out. That's kind of the point as well, because Superman is not Batman, and Batman is not Superman. They work in two very distinctly different like genres, effectively.
More than that, they are explicitly supposed to be opposites.
Yes, and
The dark night and the bright light, essentially.
Man of Steel, I guess, or Man of Tomorrow, whatever terminology we want to use there.
The big
but
blue Boy Scout, if we're keeping to the usual terms.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of them is the darkness and fighting darkness with darkness, fighting fire with fire, and the other, as I have taken to coining it, is a light that burns so bright the darkness simply just can't get purchase in him.
Well, someone actually brought up an interesting comparison or idea regarding Metropolis and Gotham. They are representations of certain ideals of America, which with Gotham is like the institutionalized corruption, because nothing ever really seems to get better in Gotham.
And the mafia and the Art Deco and the kind of...
Hold on. Well, Metropolis, which will be the city of tomorrow, which holds, Superman, right, is like the American
retro-futurist idealism.
One more time.
Retro-futurist idealism.
Yes. And again, why they work so well together, especially with like Batman and Superman, is again that opposite nature, that the design and their attitudes and everything, and it works. And they're the same age, like the actors, relatively. So,
and like having them be tonally different isn't even something that would be new for DC. Most of the best MCU movies in Phase 3 were tonally unique and tonally distinct within their universes. Even the best products of Phases 4 and 5 were tonally unique. Werewolf by Night, Agatha All Along, the Guardians Christmas Special, and so on. So having Gotham be this dark, very much pulp detective noir, and having Superman, having Metropolis be this retro futurist, like Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon. What's the other one? I always forget the other one's name.
Buck Rogers.
Yeah, actual astronaut. Buck Rogers. That's the one I was thinking of. Having Metropolis be this retro futurist, like 50s alien motif infused, idealistic hope for tomorrow, is not only perfect for the characters and not only perfect for the world, but again, it allows the DC universe to allow for multiple different tones, which it's going to need to develop one way or the other, because not everything can be a James Gunn movie.
Also, I do want to point this out regarding the Batman. I think we said this when we actually reviewed it too, 4 years ago. Jesus Christ.
Yep. Time is a hell of a thing.
For some reason, it really comes across that Pattinson's Batman, one thing, there's a lot more theatricality. It's a lot more heightened reality, even more so than Batfleck.
Yeah. It's the first one since Keaton that's really gone into the almost operatic pulp noir of Batman's
But
character.
my general point is I could buy this Batman growing to basically travel the globe with other costumed heroes fighting like giant threats, um, even like the theater. Honestly, I could totally see, because swear to God that Clayface was supposed to be the Batman proper, like, supposed to be within the world of the Batman as well.
As far as we knew, I thought that was what they were still doing. Are they not still doing that?
I don't know. It's so vague.
Are
Like,
they not making it in the same kind of vein as the Penguin?
I think it's supposed to just be part of just the DCU. It's not a connecting tissue.
God, that's okay. Having
Even though,
two,
like, I'm gonna be fully honest. It's tonally, it seems like it fits with the Batman.
yeah, having two operating Batman universes at once is already stupid. But starting a new Batman universe with a B or C list villain of his rather than with a Batman thing
B
is
list.
even more frustrating. And you're right, it would fit better with the Reeves verse in kind of the vein of like an Elephant Man type story in a like
Well, so
medical body horror
can
type
I
story. Sorry, go
um I mean when we watched Clayface, that looked like a good movie, you know. Um like I honestly see it combining like the golden age Clayface, which was just effectively a serial killer in a mask,
ahead.
with classic Clayface as we know him today.
Yeah.
Which I think they did in Gotham Caped Crusader.
Mhm.
But regardless, if anything, that feels like the way to progress Battinson to face the more out there and
Outlandish, higher concept villains and so on.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, again, at the start of the Batman, he was used to just fighting petty crime and criminal organizations.
because it started as a detective noir.
Yeah,
But as it
but
goes
with
on,
with the introduction of the Riddler, again, just came to the Batman. Um, that introduces cerebral villains that do theatrical things even more so than Batman at that time, and were just very much just like
and the escalation of both feeding into each other,
yeah.
which is also a good way of transitioning, if Matt Reeves were not being egotistical about shit, into here is a noir detective vigilante thrust into a world of metahumans and superheroes.
Gods and monsters.
I really don't like using that as a metaphor when there are literal gods and literal monsters in the setting, but sure.
I was trying to connect it, dude. Just
I know, but again,
swallow the bitter pill that it is.
if we're gonna do it, then let's do it, and we can do it in the DC universe because the DC universe is very much unlike Marvel, very heavy on its mythology. But
I
that's
agree. Look, I agree. Naming it that without actually leaning into it is stupid. I've been agreeing with you since we first found out about it. I was playing the ball where it lies. Okay.
I know it's just missed opportunities. Thy name is Warner Brothers, as usual.
Take a breath.
I don't like watching them do the single stupidest possible. I don't like watching them finding the fastest way to lose at chess every time they make a decision.
Take a. Okay.
It
We both know this.
I
Just
I am
breathe.
much more a DC fan than I am a Marvel fan. I have no hatred for Marvel, but in terms of the IPs that I give a damn about and the things that resonate with my soul, I'm a 90s millennial, and as with all 90s millennials, the Paul Dini Bruce Timm DC animated universe is just the greatest thing.
Okay. So moving on.
Yeah.
Okay. And Gunn will continue to exercise his ideas, especially his penchant for spotlighting lesser known side characters. Superman spinoff focusing on Jimmy Olsen, played by scene stealing Skylar Izado, is getting a comedic take with mockumentary series DC Crime that will shoot in this fall. I don't mind Jimmy getting one because, obviously there's Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, the comic series, right?
And
but
they just fumbled Jimmy entirely in the Snyderverse. I would have liked to have seen a world where Eisenberg was playing Jimmy like he was supposed to be originally all along.
I still see him as Lex Luthor.
No, him being Lex Luthor is fine. I just think he would have made a better. As much as I am loath to give Zack Snyder credit for things, him wanting Eisenberg to play Jimmy is one of his least retarded ideas. And I think he would have made a better Jimmy than he would have a Luthor. Not saying he couldn't have made a Luthor if they had leaned more in the direction of his Zuckerberg from the Social Network.
Or Jack Atlas from Now You See Me.
J. Daniel Atlas. Or, yeah. But yeah, like, he could have played a Luthor. I'm not saying he couldn't have played a Luthor. I'm just saying Snyder originally wanted him as Jimmy Olsen, and a broken clock is right twice a day. I think that would have been the right move.
I actually fan casted when I was doing the rewrite for Jimmy Olsen, Spencer Treat Clark. He played Joseph Dunn in the
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the Unbreakable trilogy, also known as the Easter 177 trilogy.
Yeah. Good actor. So I definitely could see him playing Jimmy Olsen.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's finish this article so we can both. I'm assuming you're about ready to pass out too.
I'm okay, but I am not. I will not be upset if we end up skipping right to the positive thing after this.
That's an 11-minute video. I'm thinking we just call it here after the article.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
But moving on.
Yeah. There's also a series focused on Mr. Terrific, played by Superman Breakout Edie Gathecki. That is in active development with Alan Heinberg, the Sandman, writing the pilot.
I'm not going to disparage Heinberg because he was involved in Netflix Sandman. By all rights, Netflix bullshitted him and didn't let him have the creative freedom he wanted. And I say that because Heinberg was also instrumental in what made the first Wonder Woman good. So I'm not going to get annoyed at Heinberg for Netflix Sandman. I'm gonna get mad at Netflix and to some degree Neil Gaiman for that. I am gonna get mad at the people in this article for not tying him more to Wonder Woman than to Netflix's Sandman, because you don't show someone's worst day at work on their CV as like their iconic thing. That's just mean. Especially because, again, it doesn't seem like he was the problem. It seems like Neil Gaiman's revisionist history bullshit of his own work was part of the problem, and then Netflixing was the other part of the problem. So, like, I'm not going to hold Netflix Sandman over Heinberg, because, God, that was one of the most Netflix fucked up things of all time. But I am slightly mad at this article for reminding me that Netflix Sandman exists. Although an associate of mine recently reminded me that it existed because he's currently watching the Netflix Sandman without having read the comics. I tried to dissuade him from doing so, but he said he would rather have an honest go at trying to enjoy the show before ruining it with a better thing. And while I can kind of see the pragmatism for that, it also made me want to cut his throat. I am not going to die.
Jesus Christ, Dalton.
Okay. For those who need a refresher, Neil Gaiman's Sandman is one of the reasons I didn't commit suicide in 2015.
No, I'm just saying, like, I know that, I understand that. I'm just saying, like, I think letting someone watch something first before they experience something actually better than that, I don't think that's warranted.
It didn't help that this is the asshole who constantly makes me feel like I'm worthless. The one I've texted you about on multiple occasions.
Okay, fair enough. I feel like you should have made that. You didn't clarify that.
But yes.
Okay, never mind. I retract my statement.
But yeah, God, but yeah, I have 2 of the 3 Absolute Sandman editions, and I will get the 3rd one as soon as I have spare money of any kind, or maybe Christmas spending. But being that it may, it's just this person has a tendency to make me flash to the meme from The Office, the "I hate so much about the things you choose to be" meme, and that was the latest in a long line of those. So yeah, me wanting to murder an acquaintance of mine aside, let's call it, because you are dying, and I'm not dying, but I'm also not upset about being dying.
Let me finish this then. Okay, fuck was it? Okay, Christ. Sorry, it's reloading for whatever fucking reason. Okay. But Supergirl's failure does put a scrutinizing spotlight on Gunn, who has positioned himself as the face of the company as no other studio head has before, thanks to his prodigious output on social media and comments in the press about quality control. Other studio heads such as Marvel's Kevin Feige or Warner's Pam Abdy are known to get vigorously involved in the post-production process, but none are filmmakers making their own movies while also running or co-running a major studio division. There is almost no modern precedent. Steven Spielberg runs Amblin, a production company, not a studio arm. Rob Reiner was a partner at Castle Rock, a large-scale entity that was run by Alan Horn. More recently, Frozen filmmaker Jennifer Lee ran Walt Disney Animation Studios until 2024, before stepping back to refocus on directing. Okay?
The fact that he's a creative is not the problem. The fact that he can't stow his tube and make decisions for the benefit of the overall universe is the problem. And you can make arguments as to how related that is to him being a creative. But in a good creative studio relationship, again, it very much mirrors the relationship I have with Brainstormer. I'm definitely more of the studio-minded person because I ask practical, pragmatic questions and like mechanical in-universe logic questions,
Fucking Christ.
and Brainstormer often doesn't really think about those much when he's creatively spitballing things. So of the two of us, I am definitely the more studio-minded one. Um, but yeah, in a good studio creative relationship, um, that's what happens. You get the person who's more like practically studio minded and kind of basically prodding the creative to see if the potential rises to the surface. Um, I don't think him being a creative is the problem. I think him not being able to turn his creative mind off and look at things from the like macro scale, like the bigger picture, is part of the problem. And Peter Safran should should be there to basically do what I do with Brainstormer, which is okay, so how does this work? Poke it and see if any more untapped potential rises to the surface. Which, if you're working with a good creative, and James Gunn is a good creative for all the mistakes I think he's made recently, um, a good creative will respond to those pokes with whole new vectors of inspiration, which will then make the thing blossom, which you definitely need if you're going to be making a version of the DC universe in blockbuster movie form, guys. You need somebody who can put the like training wheels on Gunn's creativity when it flies off into the wild blue yonder, so that he remembers, oh wait, I'm running a studio, or oh wait, I'm creating a universe. And if he's not good at taking those kind of criticisms, that I will blame him for.
Don.
Yeah, moving on.
John's regime in the Stacia Studios is to navigate the fine line of being filmmaker friendly while also trusting his strong artistic point of view that has guided him all his career. DC Studios, however, has other challenges looming larger than Supergirl's failure or the villainy of Brainiac. There are the anxieties of David Ellison's Paramount's upcoming acquisition of Warner's, and perhaps the biggest challenge ahead for Gunn and Safran may be guiding a superhero studio right as superhero movies are no longer a bulletproof genre with goaters. Oh my god, hold on. Listen to this. This is the last sentence of the article. Gen Z does not care about superhero movies, noted one studio head. That genre belongs to millennials.
No,
Hi, Gen Z here. Hold on. Gen Z here. Superheroes have been basically my entire fucking life. There's not been a day in my goddamn life, 26 years of life, where I have not been obsessed with either reading, collecting, watching, or creating superheroes.
Yeah, and he's not alone. But incidentally, it's not the generational shift, you dumbasses. Gen Z basically grew up with the MCU. Like Gen Z came onto the scene right between the Paul Dini, Bruce Timm era of the DC animated universe was wrapping up, and right as the MCU was getting rolling. So no, it's not a generation gap, you stupid, and it's not the genre either. It's the majority of the products made in the superhero movie genre of late have been varying degrees of meh to shitty instead of good. So now even a lot of the good stuff is getting buried in the scuffle. You want to fix that? Stop being dumbasses and sabotaging yourself and think through these things. Think through the practical implications, both in and out of universe. Think through the timing. Think through the scheduling. through the resources at your disposal and how you can best employ them. Match the director or the creative direction to the proper IP. Get people involved in stories that it makes sense for them specifically to tell. Hell, have fucking Del Toro make the Swamp Thing movie if he wants. That would be very, very good. But
Especially given that he got fucked over, or he got, he never got to make the Justice League Dark movie.
Yeah, run with, like, you have a multiple Oscar award-winning movie maker who has made superhero movies in the past, mind you, at a time when superhero movies were not particularly well liked. And they were some of the best in the genre and are still and remain some of the best ever in the genre, asking you, hey, can I do Swamp Thing? Hey, can I do Justice League Dark? You should be rolling out the red carpet for him with fucking caviar and truffles. The fact that you can't see someone like Del Toro going, hey, can I please make Justice League Dark and or Swamp Thing? And aren't immediately like, thank you, sir, may I have another? Maybe one of the single stupidest things I've ever heard from Warner Brothers. And as stated, they have been treading water like the fucking Titanic since 2013, and they still appear to be speedrunning their failures, as evidenced by Supergirl's recent absolutely like multitudinous flop. So like, guys, use the resources at your disposal. You're fucking Warner Brothers. You are the people who were like behind production wise the creation of arguably the best superhero animation ever put to screen, that being the Paul Dini Bruce Timm DC animated universe. Someone somewhere on the production side of the DCU, go over the DC animated universe, the DC animated universe prime, when Bruce and Paul were still, 1-2 punching everything, and go over it with a fine-tooth comb. And if you can't find ways to improve or modify or twist it in ways that will be beneficial, just fucking copy it. No one will blame you. We will all clap like motherfuckers. Just do the DC animated universe in live action, for the love of God. It's really not that hard. You could. CH Pounder looks like, I have seen the actress. She looks very much like Amanda Waller, and she is at the perfect age she could play Amanda Waller in live action. Why in the fuck do you not just cast her as Amanda Waller? She is Amanda Waller already for like at least 2 generations, both the millennials and the early Gen Z. So like, how could you possibly fuck this up? Moving on. So.
Well, with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avidazai, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
shalom. Make the DC animated universe of the Paul Dini Bruce Timm extraction in live action. And if you can't do that, then do us all a favor and fuck off.